This year is the 75th anniversary of NASCAR. NASCAR overall is a sport that has a rich history that fans, media, drivers, and everyone in between likes to look back to. And NASCAR, for instance, in its 50th season, looked back at some of its greatest drivers and would look back at some of its greatest moments. But what I think NASCAR can capitalize now, with a 75th season being catered around such a kind of task, is to teach people about drivers who more or less haven't been remembered as well. Drivers, for instance, who were good or great or had great shining moments, but get overshadowed by others that are just as deserving, if not more, of the recognition. And today, I want to try and do that a little bit by giving 7 NASCAR drivers who deserve more recognition. Starting off, we're going to go with Bobby Labonte. Now, I know a lot of people like Bobby Labonte. I know that he's pretty popular, but it still feels like, in the grand scheme of things, he's been unrecognized with his success. I mean, think about it. If I'm to ask you who you can remember as the best drivers of the late 90s, mid-90s, and also the early 2000s, I'm hard-pressed to believe Bobby Labonte is one of the first drivers that comes to your mind. And it's just because he wasn't that flashy, I don't think. If you look at his career, it's a very Jekyll and Hyde style career. From 93 to 03, he was one of the best drivers in the field. And from 1995 to 2003 as well, he got all 21 wins in his career. And from 1997 to 2000, he finished 7th or better in the points, winning the 2000 championship handily over Dale Earnhardt. So why isn't he more recognized? Well, I think it's the second half of his career. After 2003, he had a huge fall off. He never won again. He was only close, seldom a couple times. And when you look at the years from 2004 to 2013, when he pretty much hung it up full time, he finished outside the top 20 every single season in points, except 2007, where he did finish 18th in petty equipment. But other than that, he really just faded from relevance. So he's definitely someone who is very deserving of a look back at the early years of his career. Now, we're not going to stray too far with our next pick, as we're staying in the Labonte family, this time with the Iceman, Terry Labonte. Now, Terry Labonte, I've noticed, has been highlighted a lot, but it's a lot of the time just for his back and forth with Dale Earnhardt at Bristol, and I think he deserves more than that. He seemingly has been forgotten of not just being the Iceman, but being a straight-up Iron Man, making tons of different starts no matter how hurt he is, like in 1996, in the middle of his championship fight with Jeff Gordon. When you look at his career, too, he was the driver who had the longest gap between titles ever, winning a championship in 1984 and then one in 1996. That 1996 title against Jeff Gordon, like we talked about, and when you beat peak Jeff Gordon with Ray Evernham in the 90s, that is incredibly impressive. And he has 22 career wins as well. So why isn't he recognized more? Well, just like his brother, he faded at the end of his career, and then he really just sort of raced part-time deals and was seen by a lot of younger fans as a back-of-the-pack driver. Now, with the third pick, let's go to probably the best driver on this list, gentleman Ned Jarrett. Ned Jarrett, in my opinion, was the best driver in the late 50s and into the mid-60s. And yes, that includes going against greats like Richard Petty, as well as Junior Johnson and others. When you look at Ned Jarrett's career, he had the best of the best for about a 6 to 7 year span. 6 straight top 5 points finishes, won 50 races in only 7 seasons, and was literally as good as Richard Petty during that span, if not better, honestly. So why do we not remember him more? Well, one, let's be honest, how many people outside of the Pettys do we talk about from the 50s? There's no one that really makes it into mainstream NASCAR culture. He also retired early so that he could avoid some of the grisly fates that other drivers around him were suffering. And he had a great TV career, so he was one of the first, if not the first, who had a great driving career and great broadcast career. And honestly, I just think his TV career kind of overshadowed his driving career. Now, Sterling Marlin is an interesting one. He was a 2-time Daytona 500 champion. He, until Denny Hamlin won back-to-back, was the last driver to win back-to-back Daytona 500s. He finished third in points with Morgan McClure's number 4 car in 1995 and was instrumental in solidifying both Dodge and Ganassi in NASCAR for the long term. And in that same season in 2001, he also finished third in points. In 2002, he looked like a true title frontrunner, and while he wasn't leading the points when he got injured and taken out, he was definitely somebody who would have had a lot to say towards the end of the season, even if he was on the back pedal. So, why isn't he more recognized? Well, he never had a solid, consistent ride. I think that's one of my theories for it. He was bouncing around a lot or didn't have as much consistency behind the scenes as other greats around him at the time had. That, and he only won 10 races. He had a very Clint Bowyer-like career, if you think about it. And in 2002, that neck injury I talked about, it changed him as a driver. When you look at how he performed those couple years before and then after, it is night and day difference, going from a title contender for 2 straight years to 18th in points in 2003, 21st in 2004, and 30th in 2005, all in Ganassi equipment, getting outrun by guys like Jamin McMurray and Casey Mears. Next up, let's look at NASCAR royalty with Kyle Petty. Petty had 8 career wins in the Cup Series and also had top 5 points finishes in 1992 and 1993. That 1992 season meant that he also was part of the 6-way championship fight in what many consider to be one of, if not the greatest season in NASCAR history. And he really continued the Petty legacy after his father Richard started to fall off in the mid-80s. So it begs to question, why do we remember Kyle Petty as such a perennially bad driver? Well, I'm going to think it's for 2 reasons. One, he just didn't live up to his dad. Look at Dale Earnhardt Jr., for instance. Jr. had a much better career than Petty, and he still, by many, was seen as a failure because he didn't live up to Dale Earnhardt Sr. And when you're having to live up to a 7-time champion, I feel like you kind of can't do that. And on top of that, in the media, he's very opinionated, so many fans probably do not look at him in a good light and don't want to look at him as a good driver. They just want to look at him as the back-of-the-pack guy he was in the 2000s. Now, another driver that I think many won't think about in this respect is Joe Nemechek. And Nemechek didn't have a great career by any means, but he had a very solid one, all things considered. For instance, he had 4 Cup Series victories in his career, and well, one of which was even during the 2004 Chase era, which many forget about. It was at Kansas, beating Ricky Rudd. He was as high as 16th in points in 2005, overtaking guys like Kyle Busch and Dale Earnhardt Jr., and overall, he ran pretty respectively in an MB2 Motorsports car that really shouldn't have been a top 20 or even close to a top 15 car. 16 times he went to victory lane in the Xfinity Series, meaning he's tied for 20th all-time and up there with guys like AJ Allmendinger and Denny Hamlin on the all-time Xfinity win list. Why isn't he remembered? Well, he wasn't an elite driver in either series, and because of that, he really just kind of fell into the background. He was a starting parker at the end of his career too, which that probably didn't help as well, as many fans who are probably younger today just remember him as the guy in the 87 car that was out after 5 laps. Now, the last person I'm going to talk about is James Hilton, and I think many of you are asking, who? And that's why he's on this list. He was only a 2-time Cup winner, which wouldn't seem like he would need to be remembered all that much until you remember the era that he was in, or, well, multiple eras, as he raced from 1964 into 2009 in the Cup Series. He had unbelievable longevity in races he wanted to qualify for or attend, and he was runner-up in the points in 1966 to David Pearson and 67 and 71 to Richard Petty. He was one of the best guys ever who just couldn't really win that much. The equipment wasn't there, and he just managed to keep at it. He also raced in ARCA as recently as 2013 at the age of 78 before passing away in 2018. Why isn't he remembered more? Well, like I said, he didn't win, and his competition was just downright dominant at the time. Being in NASCAR in the 60s and 70s at his peak, he was going against guys like Richard Petty, Bobby Allison, Darrell Waltrip, Cale Yarborough, David Pearson. There was just no way he was going to make it with the cars he had. And with how long ago he raced in his prime, not many are remembered except for the all-time greats. With that, I want you to sound off in the comments, though, and tell me who should be more recognized this year in NASCAR's 75th anniversary season when we look back at the history of the sport. Let me know again down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support, and until next time, have a good one.